Hello and welcome to KSIB's new podcast, Cutting Through with KSIB. I'm Eleanor Hall, a former ABC journalist, now an artist, and I'll be the foil here for my friend Kristin Stubbins, the CEO of KSIB. I've known Kristin since we met as founding members of the women's education charity Women for Change. That was almost a decade ago, and Kristin and I have both been through some transition points in our lives in the last little while. I've moved from a broadcasting studio to a painting studio, and Kristin has left a CEO role at one of the world's top consultancy firms to launch her own company, KSIB. Now, you might be thinking that the name Kristin Stubbins is familiar, perhaps from headlines in the financial pages. And you'd be right, but I'll let Kristin explain. So, Kristin, let's start with why you decided to set up your own advisory firm, KSIB.
Well, thanks, Eleanor. And as you've just mentioned, I did have a very long and successful career at PwC, nearly 30 years. But really during the last couple of years, I discovered some things about myself and I discovered that I'm passionate about a few things. And one of them is about making a difference in our local business community and society here in Australia. And I guess that leads me to the fact that I'm a very patriotic Australian. So the focus for my new business is all around helping Australian businesses cut through complexity.
So tell us about the name.
Okay, so the name stands for KSIB, KS being my initials and Ironbark being the second part of the name. So KSIB, Kristin Stubbins, Ironbark. And you might ask, why Ironbarks?
Indeed.
And so when I was growing up in northwest New South Wales, I grew up in a town called Warialda, which is between Moree and Inverell, and we still have family property there.
So you're a country girl.
I am. And there are a lot of ironbark trees, and they are the best tree. They are tall and straight, reaching for the sky, struggling through adversity and coming out the other end.
And so Ironbark was it summed up in a way the spirit of your new company.
I guess it did, and I know that you know that because you helped me with the initial artwork to launch the company, and I'd love for you to share just a little bit about that with the listeners.
Look, that was such a lovely gesture, and it's interesting because we were just saying that we actually both have launched ourselves into second careers at this stage of our lives, and I was just graduating as an artist from the National Art School, and you commissioned me to do an artwork that would sum up your new company. So and you told me all about the ironbarks and how significant they were to you. So I went out to an ironbark forest to find out about these Australian natives, and they were beautiful. They have this beautiful bark that is resilient to fire. It's beautifully patterned. They have gum nuts that sort of survive through the difficult times in order to enable growth and flourish in the future. And beautiful flowers. And as you say, they grow very, very tall. But when they encounter an obstacle, they just keep going around it. And it's just such a great symbol for your courage in going around obstacles, your grace, and your commitment to building a community. And I was so happy to be able to do that triptych, Ironbark, and to have it feature for you at the launch of your company.
Well, and it's a beautiful piece of art, and anyone who sees the branding will see that ironbarks are featured, and that is Eleanor's artwork that you're seeing.
Well, there are many consulting firms, Kristin, and you used to lead one of the biggest. So tell us what's different about yours.
So as I mentioned already, this is very Australian focused. I am really looking to help Australian businesses and we seek to work with clients. So this is all about helping our clients succeed rather than doing something to them or producing a report, although obviously we're happy to do that. But it's more about working with clients to cut through their issues, to help them with their strategies, to optimise their revenue and to take advantage of opportunities. There's a lot of complexity in our world right now. The topic of this podcast is going to be about AI, and that is one of the areas where our clients are really seeing complexity and struggling to cut through. Now,
you said the topic of this podcast, but you've got a newsletter, you've got this new company, you're flourishing, you've got clients. Why did you find that there was a need for a podcast in the first place?
So I've been talked into the podcast actually by a couple of CEO friends who I was sort of talking to them about what we're doing and the fact that I was wanting to do a monthly newsletter as well as publish some, quite well thought through articles. And they said, look, we just really don't have a lot of time for reading, but we do love to listen to podcasts when we're walking the dog or, just exercising. And so the idea is that we will every month do a newsletter and a podcast with the same messages, but the podcasts will be only about 20 minutes maximum, and the newsletter similarly will be quite short and cut through because that's what we're all about.
So AI, the first topic for the Cutting Through podcast, it's something we're all increasingly aware of. Some people dismiss it as a gimmick. Some people are terrified it'll take over. What's your assessment of the importance of AI in the corporate world?
So we are actually working on some major enterprise implementations at the moment, and I would say that the impact is very profound. So some of our corporate leaders like Matt Comben at CBA and Vicky Brady at Telstra have been very vocal and publicly, strident about the impact of AI. And I agree with them. It is going to be very profound. I would almost go as far as saying it's like electrification. Others would share this view. It's very disruptive. It's going to impact not only how we work, but everything around us in terms of business, so business models. And, I think there will be, I would say, opportunities for people to reshape their careers.
So how effectively are Australian companies using AI right now?
Well, I think unfortunately we're way behind, and I have written an article about this. So I also spoke with some business leaders recently who'd just come back from San Francisco and the west coast of the US and had said it's amazing how BAU AI really is in the US. There's advertisements, up and down for all sorts of AI tools. We're not anywhere near that. And so I would say in our market there are some early adopters, some leaders, but everyone else has to catch up pretty quickly. Otherwise we're going to be left behind.
That's really interesting because a lot of the time Australians are good at taking on technology early. Why do you think it is that Australian businesses aren't engaging? Is it a fear? Is it a hope that it'll just go away if they don't?
I think it's really interesting, particularly because I think we are early adopters in terms of our individual use of technology, and apparently we are, as a society, a very high user of AI as individuals. But I do think there is a natural sort of risk aversion in the business community to using this technology at an enterprise level, and I understand that because it is tricky and it can be overwhelming. But if we don't start now, we're never actually going to keep up and will be overtaken. I do understand the reticence to step forward. I think a lot of executives have been really scarred by IT implementations that have gone wrong in the past, but there are ways you can control this, and I would say taking that first leap is just really important.
You were mentioning that we are good at taking up technology on a personal level. When did you first start using AI, and how? I mean, I think many of us, when we saw ChatGPT, we started asking it goofy questions, and I've asked it obscure art questions. How do you use AI personally, and also how does it work for you in your workplace?
Yeah, well, I am one of those crazy people who loves to work, so I don't really distinguish my personal life and my work life. But I would say I'm using it constantly now, both at work and for anything I sort of want to look at personally. I would say two main areas. So we have an enterprise subscription to the through OpenAI, and we also use Copilot, the Microsoft offering. But equally different LLMs for different purposes. And I think one thing I would say is just at a personal level, anyone who is really interested in a particular topic should try to do some deep research on some of the LLMs And you will be really surprised, I think, at how impactful and insightful it can be. Now, of course, you can't just trust everything that comes out, and so that's where the critical thinking and your own knowledge comes in. But I have run some experiments with some CEOs recently, and I think they've been quite surprised at how good it actually is.
It can be really good, but there are, of course, the risks. AI is known for hallucinating. It sometimes just makes things up. I've known people where it just doubles down and argues back. And even when you're telling it, no, that's not the case. How can companies manage that sort of a risk?
Well, I think the first thing to recognise is that, look, humans are going to remain very important in my view. But the most important thing is that we engage our critical thinking. So like everything, we have to understand the opportunities and the risks of what we do and what we use. So we have actually developed a methodology on how to think about that, how to create an innovation system. But that innovation system really needs to have governance and controls and ethics and all of those things embedded within it. But I would say a really important point is that the humans have to stay in control of this, have to be challenging and thinking about new ways of creating controls and testing the outputs. So if the inputs are bad, then the outputs are going to be bad. So you can test inputs and outputs. It's very difficult to test what goes on in between, but inputs and outputs you can certainly test and understand.
But you've devised a system that can be applied to any company as long as those people within the company are actually willing to learn how to use it?
Yeah, it's just a very, I think, common sense 7-step process. But the challenge with it that is harder than common sense is actually getting in and understanding the nuances of your business and how you're applying it. We've talked a little bit today about LLMs. They're really the underpinning technology, but also where this is all going at the enterprise level is about using AI agents to solve problems. That's a little bit more complex. You need to understand how all these things sort of fit together, but you don't need to be a data scientist or a coder to do it. It's really understanding, asking common sense questions and building the controls around what you're doing.
You mentioned that this could be as disruptive or as a bigger change as electricity was. What can businesses today learn from previous moments of technological disruption?
Yeah, so I think thinking through the broader consequences is a big thing. So, I talked about the innovation system. Part of that is about understanding the flow-on consequences of decisions that get made. So this is not just a technology implementation. This is business disruption. What does that mean for workforce? What does that mean in terms of how you plan for the future, how you get your people mobilised and how people upskill for the new world? The critical thing, I think, on all of this is leadership and how do leaders really think through the full implications of what this is going to do for their business and then how they instill that critical thinking and development in their people, because we really do need people. It's not that, there's going to be a wholesale lack of opportunity for work in the workforce. It's just that the work is going to be different. So work that is heavily process-oriented is not going to be as common anymore because machines can do that. But we do need people who are real critical thinkers who can challenge what outputs from the machines are, and we need leadership. We're also going to need all the wonderful craftspeople to build everything and have skilled workers and, doing all of those normal things. So people who are really afraid that, this is going to create job losses, yes, it will in certain industries, but there'll be a whole lot of new skills that are needed as well.
So we should be optimistic about it.
Well, I am. But like any other disruption that has ever happened, it's not easy when you're going through the transition. So there will be change. People just can't keep doing the same thing over and over again. There will be change, but, the world went on when we went from horse and cart to cars. The world went on when we invented electricity. It's how we adapt and lean into the new world, I think, that's important.
So, Kristin, you mentioned leadership. If I'm a CEO and I haven't yet taken that first step into the AI world, what should I do?
So I have tried a few things myself and advised clients on this. I personally think rather than trying to do courses or anything like that, just start experimenting. Get yourself, obviously there's the sort of personal options, but get yourself an enterprise level subscription. I think it's sort of $50 US a month or something for, just one of the LLMs and a couple of licenses. So it's not expensive. Get on, start experimenting, and then start asking yourself, what's the enterprise level opportunities, which is not only, doing research or applying LLMs, but actually how could this help me solve bigger problems? So that's about reading, talking to other CEOs, get yourself involved a little bit in the art of the possible. What's the art of the possible here?
So if I can summarise your message, it's that while, yes, there are risks with AI, the biggest risk is doing nothing, and that CEOs should start experimenting now and setting the culture from the top down and being creative. And, of course, they should all come to KSIB, get their systems and their people perfectly placed for the future.
That would be great. Thanks, Eleanor.
Well, that's a wrap for episode 1. You've been listening to Cutting Through with KSIB.